Welcome students to EPG Pathshala program. I am Professor R.Thiagarajan, the Professor and Head of the Department of Sanskrit, Presidency College, Chennai. The subject which we are going to deal with today is Indian culture, in which Indian aesthetics and culture, fine arts, happen to be one paper. In this, today we are going to have the continuation or the second part of the history and development of Sanskrit poetics. In this module, we are going to know who is the trendsetters of poetics. In the earlier module, we saw how the subject poetics as such originated. Now, we are going to see who are the trendsetters of poetics, and we will know the zenith of literary speculation, and in that poeticians like Dandin, Vamana and Anandavardhana, also Abhinavagupta, are all the trendsetters regarding whom we are going to have a study. How do they actually contribute to poetics? That is also our question. Bhamaha happened to be the earliest writer on poetics. So we can call him as the first trendsetter, because there are a lot of people who have given different trends at different times. But yet, Bhamaha happened to be, we can say, the Pitamaha of Alankara Shastra. He belonged to 7th century AD. His work is Kavya Alankara, that is a work dealing with Sanskrit poetics. This work is the first to deal with poetics separately from dramatic theory. Why I am telling this is that Bharata happened to be the earliest one who described about the Alankaras and other things. And he has written it especially for Natya. So, Natya Shastra. So, this was a treatise specially for Natya Shastra, and in which he has dealt with the Alankaras also. So, which happened to be the auxiliary thing for the Natya. But as far as poetry is concerned, the first man to bring out a Shastra happened to be Bhamaha. And he is held as the first man of literary criticism. Next, we shall see the influence of Bhamaha's views on subsequent poetics also. Definitely, he has influenced the later poeticians. Subsequent to Bhamaha, the other work which contributed to the Alankara theory, of course, reading Bhamaha, were Kavyalankara Sangraha of Udbata, who followed him during 8th century AD, and Kavyalankara of Rudrata a century later, that is during 9th century AD. Udbata authored the Bhamaha Vivarana, a commentary of Bhamaha's work. That means he accepts all the views of Bhamaha, but he felt that there was some explanation required for what all Bhamaha has said. So, he has written the Vivarana, Bhamaha Vivarana. Vivarana means expansion and explanation, a running commentary, we can say, for Bhamaha, Bhamaha's Kavya Alankara. Now, let us see what is the period of zenith of literary speculation. The next 7 centuries that followed, almost important Sanskrit works were written. It is after Bhamaha, and all the literary theories developed. During this period, both poetics and dramatic theory have attracted attention of the scholars, and literary speculation reached the zenith during this period only, that is about 7 centuries. And among the poeticians, Dandin, who belonged to the south, it is said that he belonged to Kanchipuram, he wrote Kavya Adarsha, that is a mirror of poetry. Not only that, you can interpret Kavya Adarsha into not only mirror, but also it is the first trendsetter Adarsha means the first of its kind. So after Bhamaha, the next writer on poetic theory was the well-known critic and poet, this Dandin alone, who belonged to 8th century AD. He is the author of Kavya-darsha. His work is a systematic presentation of the substance than Bhamaha's. So it should be, because one work has already come, and Dandin, who came later, might have definitely read his work also. So he should have felt that there should be some improvement in what all he writes over Bhamaha. So he attempted the Alankara Shastra as Kavya-darsha, and it happened to be a little bit developing the concepts and the ideas of Bhamaha. The importance of this work is that it is popular in South India and Ceylon also, where in South India it has been translated. People say it is not actually the original translation. The concept is taken, and of course it was adapted to Tamil, which happened to be Dandi Alangaram. They say in Tamil, Dandi Alangaram, and it has been translated in Sinhalese also. Dandin is recognized as the earliest theorist to devote attention to the guna riti aspect of poetry. Because when Bhamaha wrote, he said, Sabdartau Sahitau Kavyam. That was the first definition given by him. What is Kavya? Sabdartau Sahitau Kavyam. Prior to that, there was one definition, commonly known to all. It is common also. Kavehe Karma Kavyam. See, the Kavya is defined as the work of poet. It is so simple. Where it is not actually pinpointing the contribution of a poet. Because Kavehe Karma means any karma, any activity of karma becomes Kavya. Actually, that is not. So, the developed definition happened to be Sabdartau Sahitau Kavyam. So, the word and meaning attached together, when presented, it becomes a Kavya. There also, it is not very clear in the sense. Every word has got its own meaning. But what is the significance of a poetry when a sentence is uttered? It can be an ordinary sentence also, which carries some meaning. But it should be poetic. Poetic in the sense it should have some sort of alankara also, embellishment. So the greater portion of the first chapter in his work is devoted to the study of ritis, style, and their constituent gunas, regarding which we are going to discuss in other modules. What is a guna? What is actually riti? How many ritis are there? And what is more attractive? So those things we are going to discuss. But riti and guna go together. So he gives importance to alankara, riti, guna in his Kavya-darsha. The next author who comes after Dandin happens to be Vamana, who wrote an Alankara Shastra called Kavya-alankara Sutravritti. He belonged to 9th century AD. So he is the successor of Dandin, and he built up the theory based on Guna Riti theory of Dandin. He popularized Riti theory especially, and he was the first to introduce the concept of soul in poetry. Till then, people never talked about soul. They have been talking about the structure of it, the external aspect of it. Only he started telling that there is a soul behind it, it is the spirit of a poetry. What is that spirit of poetry? He says, Ritiratma Kavyasya. Riti happened to be the soul of poetry. First, the word he uttered as Atma, soul, to poetry is Riti, the style. The factor that separates poetic speech from ordinary speech. Because, as I told you earlier, when Bhamaha said Sabdartho Sahitau Kavyam, etc., the doubt is always there. The very ordinary sentence also should be called as poetry? No. For which he substantiates saying that it should be separate. It should be poetry is something different from ordinary speech. So he said Riti. Like Dandin, he too explains Riti associating with gunas. Then comes the greatest giant of literary criticism, Anandavardhana, who is also commented by Abhinav Gupta in his work Abhinav Bharati. Many important theoretical works were written in 9th century AD. Among them, the prominence goes to Dunyaloka, written by the famous aesthetician Anandavardhana, who belonged to Kashmir. This is the most important work in the entire history of Sanskrit poetic theory. He is the greatest literary critic and also the inventor of the theory Dhwani. But he doesn't admit as the inventor. He says that we belong to the school of Dhwani without telling who is actually the original teacher of him. Dunyaloka is his work, and his commentary also said to have been written by him as Dunyaloka Lochana during 10th century AD. So Abhinav Gupta, who is the follower of Dunyaloka and the appreciator of Dhwani, after writing a commentary on this, transformed the entire trend of poetics and gave a turn towards an entirely new perception. These two treatises, that is Dunyaloka and the commentary by Abhinav Gupta, focus on a firm understanding of the aesthetic element in poetry. Their critical view is applauded by the theorists as the best approach to evaluation of poetry. Then onwards, the emphasis got shifted from the formal to the content aspect of poetry. Next, we shall see what is actually the Dhwani theory. He is called, the Anandavardhana is called a neo-theorist, and whoever follows him happen to be neo-theorists, Abhinav Gupta too. According to them, and especially Anandavardhana spells out in his Dunyaloka, the importance of the function of suggestion in poetic language. Function is suggestion in poetic language. He says, Kavyasyaatma dhuniriti budaihi yasamamnata purvaha tasya abhavam jagatuhu apare bhaktamahustamanye kechit vacham stitam avishaye tattvamuchustadiyam tena brumaha sagridemana pritaye tat swarupam. That is the first verse itself given by Anandavardhana. What he says? Kavyasyaatma dhunihi. Whereas Vamana said, Kavyasyaatma ritihi, ritiratma kavyasya. That is his statement. Anandavardhana says, Kavyasyaatma dhunihi. But cleverly he says, just like Yajnavalkya in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad was questioned by Maitreyi, can you pinpoint exactly what is Brahman? Very clever question posed to Yajnavalkya. If Yajnavalkya says something about it, then he cannot be counted as Brahmagyani. That was a place to test who is Brahmagyani by King Janaka. So the question by Maitreyi is a little twisting, because it is said, Yato vacho na nivartante aprapya manasa saha. See, the words and the minds went together in search of Brahman, but both of them came back as a failure without finding out who is Brahman. So, such a concept, if it is to be explained, you cannot describe it. So, Yajnavalkya cleverly said that it is Aksharam, that which does not perish at any time. It is ever existing. So, he said that, and then said, it is thus the Brahmavadins have already stated. So, as if he is not telling, he has borrowed the words of his ancestors. He has answered. Like that, Anandavardhana too says, Kavyasyaatma dhuniriti budaihi samamnata purvaha. It has been already stated by the intelligent persons who knew the art of poetry. So regarding this, we will discuss when we are talking actually about Andavardhana. So the aesthetic significance has been first very much attached to Dhwani. His followers also. See, his followers were given the name as Sahridayas. Who is a Sahridaya? The Sahridaya is one who follows the author and thinks on the lines of the author. He can alone appreciate what is the content in it and what is actually suggested in it. So, a person who is seasoned in the Dhwani concept alone is called Sahridaya. So, the other followers also credit the success in satisfactorily incorporating the concept of rasa into their critical framework. Because Anandavardhana talks about Dhwani. Of course, the various Dhwanis he is just bringing out, but amongst that, Rasadhwani is given prominence, and he goes to the extent telling that amongst all the Dhwanis, Rasadhwani is Dhwani, he says. Thus, introduction of Dhwani theory was the crowning achievement in Sanskrit aesthetic thoughts. Then we will know who are the interpreters of rasa. Bharata has already stated the rasa concept is very important, for which only he has written a Rasa Sutra, regarding which we are going to see in the next module. Right from Vamaha up to 9th century AD, the attention of literary theories was focused on poetry. Mostly the major works belonging to this period deal with poetry and poetic criticism. However, in the field of dramatic theory, there existed a few prominent scholars who made valuable contributions to the poetics, at least in the form of commentaries to Natya Shastra of Bharata. They are Bhatta Lollata, who belonged to 8th century AD. Because Bharata said, Vibhava, Anubhava, Vyabhichari Samyogat, Rasa Nishpattihi. How the rasa is created. That is because of Vibhava, Anubhava and Vyabhichari Bhavas, he says, with regard to the Natya Shastra. So, Rasa Nishpatti he is telling, Rasa Nishpatti, but the aesthetic pleasure is arising. So, the concept of Rasa Nishpatti or the aesthetic pleasure has been already noted down by Bharata. But the conception by Bharata happened to be commented upon by others based on different conceptual thoughts. Amongst them happened to be, the first one happened to be Bhatta Lollata. This Bhatta Lollata, who belonged to 8th century, gave his own interpretation. Of course, we are going to see, or rather analyze the interpretation of Bhatta Lollata in the next upcoming modules. And the next author who happened to interpret Rasa Sutra is Sri Shankuka, who belonged to 9th century AD. Their works are not available now, these two, Sri Shankuka's work, but their views on rasas are found quoted in subsequent treatises such as Abhinava Bharati by Abhinava Bhatta. See, this Abhinava Bharati is a very, very important text as regards Natya Shastra, because the commentary is very well appreciated by the scholars. Then Kavya Prakasha of Mammata and Kavyanusasana of Hemachandra also are considered to be very important with regard to the interpretation of the rasa. In this context, mention may be made of Bhattanayaka of the 10th century AD, about whom our knowledge is restricted to references in Dhwanyalokalochana and the above mentioned works. Like Bhatta Lollata, Sri Shankuka, Bhattanayaka too are credited with an interpretation of the Rasa Sutra. He was the author of the treatise entitled Hridaya-darpana, that is the mirror of the heart, which is now lost. It is not certain whether the rasa interpretation appeared in this work in a separate commentary on Natya Shastra, or he has written a work Hridaya-darpana itself, in which he has dealt with the interpretation of rasa. A detailed discussion on interpreters of rasa sutra, as I told you, will be given in the separate module. Now, in this module, we have gone through the different concepts of poetics. First, we saw the Riti theory by Vamana. Riti means style. Style in the presentation, how you are going to write the poetry, the sentences, and the sense echoing over sounds. Such things are being dealt with in the Riti theory. And gunas such as Slesha Prasad Samata, Madhuryam Sukumarata, Arthavritti Rudaratvam, these are all the gunas. And Dandin happens to be belonging to the guna school. Of course, the guna and Riti generally cannot be separately dealt with. Both are together. But however, Dandin also focused on the gunas, more on gunas, and Vamana happens to be focusing more on Riti, and thus both belong to Guna Riti school. So we saw Guna and Riti happen to be the important component of poetry and dealt with by them. And Dandin wrote Kavya Dasha to explain that, and Vamana wrote Kavya Alankara Sutra Vritti. So he wrote Kavya Alankara Sutra and also a Vritti. Vritti means it's a small tippani or commentary, small commentary on that. An explanation, we can say. Instead of telling a commentary, you can just say it is an explanation. So we saw those Riti and Guna school. Later on, we came to know about Dhvani. So, Riti, and we also saw that Vamana happened to be the first person to pronounce Atma for a Kavya, that is Riti Atma Kavyasya, and followed by Anandavardhana, who said, rather, he slightly ignored the Vritti and said their importance happens to be on Dhvani, the suggestive element of a Kavya. Kavyasya Dhvanihi, he said. And this appears to be something new interpretation as regards Kavya Shastra. And Abhinava Bhatta, who followed Anandavardhana, happened to write more on that by commenting on it through his commentary, and both Abhinava Bhatta and Anandavardhana happened to be belonging to Dhvani school of poetry. Later on, the Rasa school got its prominence. Of course, Dhvanikara, that is Anandavardhana, has not denied the importance of rasa. He brings rasa into the world of Dhvani. So even that rasa has to be suggested. So simply telling Sringara, Sringara, Sringara in a poem will not evoke Sringara. So the bhavas are to be created, and the maturity of the bhava culminates at last with the greatest sentiment. The emotion attaining maturity culminates in a rasa, and accordingly, for each and every rasa, different types of emotions are there. Such emotions are to be evoked by the writer through his pen. So this also is thought And finally, Anandavardhana said, though my argument is more on suggestive poetry, my emphasis and the prominence is on Rasadvani. So, the Rasa, suggestion or the Rasa happen to be the important thing, the soul of a kavya or the spirit of a kavya. Thus, Anandavardhana and Abhinavagupta have paved the way for the new theories, and therefore they were called neo theorists. Thank you.